The following information, material, and content is covered under fair use. This is for training and educational purposes only, for teaching and commenting in a classroom setting. Again, this is for training and educational purposes only. This does not constitute tax advice, legal advice, nor financial advice. If you need any applicable advice, please seek competent counsel. Do your own due diligence, regardless of who presents the information. All rights, titles, and actions or interest reserved ab initio without prejudice. Hey everyone, it's B with 2B Fruitful Training Group. All praises to the Most High. And today we're going to be going over Alexandria, Egypt, and its location in America, as it is presently known as Alexandria, Virginia. Before we delve in too far, I'd like to make an important notice. I'm changing the name of the series America, the True Old World, as I have recently just discovered a quotation from a book of the similar name, almost identical. So I'm going to be changing it to America, the Old World, just so that everyone knows. To better highlight and underscore the true origin of ancient civilizations, including Ptolemaic Egypt, Roman Egypt, Roman Britannia, and other ancient civilizations here in America, we looked at ChatGPT to do just a little bit of digging for us. So asked it to give us some quotations, and it definitely delivered. So first quotation, America BC by Barry Fell. Here's the excerpt, and quote, "It is my belief that many of the ancient Celtic inscriptions found in the United States are older than those in Britain, indicating that the Celts may have originated here in America and later migrated to Europe. The similarities in language and symbology suggest a deep-rooted connection between the Old World and the New World, one that predates Columbus by many centuries." Here's the second excerpt, "The Secret Teachings of All Ages" by Manly P. Hall. End quote. "The New World, though new to those who came after Columbus, was old indeed to the Atlanteans and other civilizations that had existed on this continent long before recorded history. The knowledge of these ancient peoples was preserved in secret, passed down through initiates and secret societies who knew the true history of the world." And just if you're not aware, Manly P. Hall was a Freemason. Here we have "The Keys to the Sacred Science" by H.C. Randall Stevens. End quote. "There is a sacred geography known to the ancients that connects the holy sites of the world. These sites, which include the pyramids of Egypt and the temples of the Americas, are not just random constructions, but are aligned with the stars and with each other in a way that reflects the original blueprint of the world. This knowledge was preserved in the mystery schools and can be traced back to a common origin in the Americas." We have another quote, "The Hiram Key" by Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas. End quote. "The symbols and rituals of Freemasonry are not merely the remnants of medieval guilds, but are the surviving fragments of a much older tradition that stretches back to the builders of the pyramids in Egypt, and even earlier to the civilizations that existed in what we now call the New World. The true origins of these rituals are hidden in the history of America, a land known to the ancients as a place of great power." We have another quote, "The Lost Continent of Mu" by James Churchward. End quote. Mu, the motherland of man, was not located in the Pacific, but in the Americas, The evidence is clear from the numerous artifacts and writings left behind by the descendants of Mu, who traveled across the world spreading their knowledge. The cities of the Old World, including those in Egypt and Britannia, were established by these travelers and were reflections of the original cities in Mu, which is now known as America. And another quote, "The Mystery of the Cathedrals" by Fulcanelli. The cathedrals of Europe, especially those dedicated to the Virgin, were constructed according to principles and designs that were not of this world, but were derived from the ancient wisdom of a civilization that predated the fall of Atlantis. The key to this wisdom lies in America, where the true knowledge of the ancients was preserved by those who survived the cataclysms. Continuing from Born in Blood, The Lost Secrets of Freemasonry by John J. Robinson, and quote, "The origins of Freemasonry can be traced not to the medieval guilds of Europe, but to a far older tradition rooted in the New World. This tradition was brought to Europe by the Knights Templar, who had discovered the ancient secrets during their travels to America. The rituals of Freemasonry encode this hidden history, revealing that the true Jerusalem and the true origins of Western civilization lie not in the East, but in the West, in America." End quote. And continuing with conversation with ChatGPT, we have more quotations. And one of these quotes is, "It is said that the hieroglyphs found in the Grand Canyon and the architectural similarities of certain ancient American structures to Egyptian temples suggest that Egypt and America were connected in the distant past." End quote. America, the True Old World by Amenhotep Chavez El-Bey. And quote, "The belief that America is the true, quote, Old World, unquote, is supported by various artifacts and symbols that show a direct connection to ancient Egypt. The murals in the Library of Congress depict the United States as the successor of ancient Egypt, pointing to a deeper esoteric history," end quote. "The Antiquities of the Americas, reinterpreting the Old World in the New." And further, quote, "The pyramidal structures found in Mesoamerica, while not directly connected to Egypt, demonstrate the possibilities of sharing ideas or coincidental development of similar architectural forms across different cultures," end quote. "Ancient Civilizations of the Americas" by Robert M. Carmack. It's important to note that, to my knowledge, I don't know of any other civilization that's referenced that has the Meso, particularly in reference to Mesopotamia. And it's also interesting to note that Mesopotamia is seemingly directly connected to Ptolemaic, or the Ptolemaic dynasties, with the Ptolemies and ruling in Greek administration over Egypt. And further, quote, "The Potomac River, derived from ancient names associated with water and gods in Roman Britain, indicates that the Romans may have had an understanding or even a presence in the Americas, which later informed the naming of significant geographical features," end quote. York or New York, re-examining the origins of Roman Britannia. Quote, Place names like York, Londinium, and even the Potomac reflect a transatlantic exchange that predates the accepted timeline of European exploration. These names carry echoes of the Roman Empire, suggesting that America was part of the ancient world, end quote. From Londinium to Augusta, a re-examination of Roman influence in the Americas. Quote, "The name Potomac is derived from a Native American tribe but the idea of Roman influence is intriguing if we consider speculative theories about pre-Columbian transatlantic contact. End quote. Explorations in the History of North America by Alan Taylor. And further, quote, the Ptolemaic dynasty, known for its mastery of cartography and astronomy, might have had maps that included parts of what we now call America, indicating their awareness of lands across the Atlantic, end quote. The Ptolemies and the Americas, Hidden Histories by Dr. Alexander Thompson. Quote, certain artifacts found in North America suggest a connection to Hellenistic culture, possibly brought over by Ptolemaic explorers or later by Romans who had contact with Egypt, end quote. Mysteries of the Ancient Americas by William R. Corliss. Quote, America's rivers, such as the Potomac, and cities, such as New York, reflect an ancient and perhaps deliberate connection to the Old World, one that has been obscured by later historical narratives, end quote. The Antiquities of the Americas. Quote, the murals in the Library of Congress are more than artistic decoration. They are a visual representation of America's place in ancient history, symbolically linking it to Egypt, Rome, and other ancient civilizations, end quote. Symbolism and Hidden History in America's Capital by Richard L. Thompson. And further, highlighting New York as the original York and Eboracum, Roman Britannia. Quote, Eboracum, known today as York in England, was originally located in what is now New York. The Roman influence in this region is evident in the architectural remnants and city planning that mirror ancient Roman designs, end quote. York in America, A Study of Ancient Connections by Joseph J. Ellis. And further, quote, the city of New York, founded by the Dutch, but named after the Duke of York, bears a striking resemblance in both name and early history to York in England, the site of the Roman fortress Eboracum. This has led some to speculate that New York was in fact the original Eboracum, transported in memory to the British Isles, end quote. America's Hidden History by Philip Coppens. And as we covered in the New York or York, England Eboracum video, in the New York seal there is the words Novi Eboraki or New Eboracum, and highlighting how Colchester, Connecticut is the original Camalodunum or Colchester, England. Quote, the founding of Colchester, Connecticut in 1666 aligns with the establishment of New London County, coinciding with the Sesquier V Act. This suggests that the town's naming was more than a tribute to its English counterpart, but a recognition of its role as the original Colchester, the Camalodunum of Roman Britain, end quote. Camalodunum in America by David Hatchard Childress. And further, quote, Colchester, Connecticut, with its deep colonial roots, was believed by some early settlers to be the original Camalodunum, the first Roman capital of Britain. The timing of its establishment, in relation to the Sesquier V Act, hints at deeper connections between this American town and its ancient past, end quote. Secrets of the Founding Fathers by Manly P. Hall. In establishing the link between Augusta, Georgia as the original Londinium of Roman Britain? Quote, Londinium, the ancient Roman name for London, was renamed Augusta after the emperor. The city of Augusta, Georgia, is believed to be the original site of Londinium, a theory supported by the city's early Roman-style architecture and strategic location. End quote. The True Londinium, Uncovering Augusta's Past by Ralph Ellis. Quote, Augusta, Georgia holds many clues that it was once Londinium, the Roman capital in Britain. From its strategic location to the architectural influence visible in its early structures, the evidence points to a transatlantic connection that predates the accepted history of America. End quote. Ancient Rome in America by John Mitchell. Underscoring the Ptolemaic dynasty and its connection to the Potomac River. Quote, the Potomac River, whose name resonates with ancient Egyptian nomenclature, may be linked to the Ptolemaic dynasty, which some believe had knowledge of the American continent long before Columbus. The river's connection to Alexandria, as seen in the George Washington National Masonic Memorial, strengthens this theory. End quote. The Ptolemies and the New World by Stephen Sora. Further, quote, the Potomac River's name has sparked much debate among historians. Some believe it derives from an ancient Egyptian root connected to the Ptolemaic dynasty, who through their mastery of navigation and astronomy may have charted routes to the Americas. End quote. Lost Cities of North America by David Hatcher Childress. And looking to establish the connection between the George Washington National Masonic Memorial as the Lighthouse of Alexandria, quote, the George Washington National Masonic Memorial is more than a tribute to the first president. It is a symbolic representation of the Lighthouse of Alexandria, reflecting the deep ties between ancient Egyptian knowledge and the founding of the United States. End quote. Masonic Symbols in the New World by Michael A. Hoffman II. It's also important to note that there's quite a number of similarities in the Lighthouse of Alexandria as it is presently known from the modern interpretations of history and the memorial as it is used by the Freemasons as, I believe, a lodge and houses many historical secrets in regards to Alexandria, Virginia. Another thing too is, it's not unclear to me at this time whether the original Lighthouse of Alexandria was even a lighthouse. It might have necessarily been more of a metaphor for guiding ships or vessels, people to higher learning, so-called, of the Freemasons, and, in its original location in Alexandria, Virginia. Continuing, quote, standing tall in Alexandria, Virginia, the George Washington National Masonic Memorial is an architectural homage to the Lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. This connection to the Ptolemaic dynasty suggests a continuity of ancient wisdom preserved and brought to the New World. The Masonic Influence on American History by Manly P. Hall. And from their website, we have the memorial's form was inspired by the Lighthouse of Alexandria, Egypt, one of the ancient 7 wonders of the world, and its design reflects the classical architecture of Greece and Rome. And in regards to Manly P. Hall, we have an article from MasonicFind.com. So here they like to say that the quote is taken out of context, but regardless of context, this is a wild quote to come across. It states, "When the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply energy." End quote. And it states here, this seems to be the most prevalent quote from Hall used against Masons. And here's what they assert. However, the term Lucifer here does not refer to the satanic figure of Christianity, but is rather a classical poetic reference to the search for knowledge, wisdom, and truth. Source, worst enemies. Of course, this context is either missed or ignored by critics. I don't think that the name Lucifer is going to be some esoteric meaning for the search of knowledge. While it is applied, and it was something that, Lucifer, the light bringer, is known for in deceiving people, which also corresponds to the lighthouse nature, of the lighthouse of Alexandria, or the George Washington National Masonic Memorial. It just further proves that the Freemasons and other Yorkite cults clearly either serve or worship the fallen. Is this historic lighthouse of Alexandria what's being referenced on this seal? It's also interesting to note too, when an eagle in symbolism has its wings upward, it's not an eagle, it's a phoenix. So just something to note. You have ships being guided to a lighthouse, and you have a phoenix over it. Something to ponder on. And to further develop this connection between Alexandria, Egypt, and its modernly coined name, Alexandria, Virginia, we look to some of the ruins in Alexandria. They're present today. There's quite a number of ruins, especially around those areas in Virginia, other places. And here this article kind of goes over, they turned these ruins into Promenade Classique Park, and they made it to seem like it was some sort of art project, but you'd be hard pressed to find any artist that can render features in stone to the degree and specifications of even these demolished pieces. These are very well crafted despite being completely destroyed. And further, you have other obelisks, here in Alexandria, Virginia. You have other pieces that they couldn't quite get rid of, and they left just the remnants of. You have what looks like Roman numerals on this giant stone right here. You have other lips that have been set on display. So it's very clear that, when Alexandria was either, destroyed and then rebuilt, they kept some of the token pieces as remnants and landmarks to help to tie and remember its historical connection to the location of antiquity. And continuing, Out of Encyclopedia Britannica, we have Septuagint, also known as LXX or 70. It states here, Septuagint, the earliest extant Greek translation of the Old Testament from the original Hebrew. The Septuagint was presumably made for the Jewish community in Egypt when Greek was the common language throughout the region. Analysis of the language has established that the Torah, or Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, were translated near the middle of the 3rd century BCE, and that the rest of the Old Testament was translated in the 2nd century BCE. The name Septuagint, from the Latin Septuaginta, 70, was derived later from the legend that there were 72 translators. And out of Merriam-Webster, we have legend, a story coming down from the past, a body of such stories, a popular myth of recent origin, a person or thing that inspires legends, an inscription or title on an object, such as a coin. The quarter bore the legend, "In God We Trust." Synonyms: key. It's also an explanatory list of the symbols on a map or chart. And again, out of Encyclopedia Britannica, it states, so as there were 72 translators, 6 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, who worked independently to translate the whole and ultimately produced identical versions. Another legend holds that the translators were sent to Alexandria by Eleazar, the chief priest at Jerusalem, at the request of Ptolemy II Philadelphus. Though its source, the letter of Aristeas, is unreliable, despite the tradition that it was perfectly translated, there are large differences in style and usage between the Septuagint's translation of the Torah and its translations of the later books in the Old Testament. In the 3rd century CE, Origen attempted to clear up copyists' errors that had crept into the text of the Septuagint, which by then varied widely from copy to copy, and a number of other scholars consulted the Hebrew texts in order to make the Septuagint more accurate. Given that the language of much of the early Christian church was Greek, many early Christians relied on the Septuagint to locate the prophecies they claimed were fulfilled by Christ. Jews considered this a misuse of Holy Scripture and stopped using the Septuagint altogether. Its subsequent history lies with the Christian church. It's funny that they use the word lies with the Christian church. The Greek text, not the original Hebrew, was the main basis for the Old Latin, Coptic, Ethiopic, Armenian, Georgian, Slavonic, and part of the Arabic translations of the Old Testament, and has never ceased to be the standard version of the Old Testament in the Greek church. Indeed, St. Jerome used the Septuagint to begin his translation of the Vulgate Old Testament in 382 CE. In addition to all the books of the Hebrew canon, the Septuagint, under Christian auspices, separated the minor prophets and some other books, and added the extra books known to the Protestants and Jews as apocryphal and to Roman Catholics as deuterocanonical. The Hebrew canon has 3 divisions, and it states there. It's important to note that the Apocrypha, even in the Brenton Septuagint, are there. There's no New Testament in the Brenton Septuagint. Just something to be aware of. Septuagint has 4: law, history, poetry, and prophets, with the books of the Apocrypha inserted where appropriate. This division is continued in the Western Church in the most modern Bible translations, except that in Protestant versions, the Apocrypha are either omitted or grouped separately. The text of the Septuagint is contained in a few early, but not necessarily reliable, manuscripts. The best known of these are the Codex Vaticanus and the Codex Sinaiticus, both dating from the 4th century CE, and the Codex Alexandrinus from the 5th century. There are also numerous early papyrus fragments and many later manuscripts. They saved this for the very end. The first printed copy of the Septuagint was in the Complutensian Polyglot, 1514 to 1522. It's funny how they state that the Christians based all of their stuff on the Septuagint. And it's also quite funny that they state that the first written Septuagint is in 1514. And further building on the Septuagint, the Complutensian Polyglot Bible, the first and best known polyglot Bible, in which the text was presented in several languages in adjacent columns. The Old Testament and the Complutensian contained a revised Masoretic Hebrew text and translations in Aramaic, the Targum of Onkelos, Latin, the Vulgate, and Greek, the Lucianic recension of the Septuagint, printed in full for the first time. The Complutensian New Testament presented the original Greek version together with the Latin translation. It was prepared at the University of Alcalá de Henares in Spain by a group of scholars under the sponsorship of Cardinal Francisco Jiménez de Cisneros, and printed, probably 600 copies, in 1514 to 1517, with the authorization of Pope Leo X. The work was published in 1521 or 1522. And it is also interesting that Pope Leo X is attributed with some pretty heavy quotes that seem to elucidate the situation with regards to Christianity. It states here, the first supposedly to refer to the prophets of the fable of Christ was Pope Boniface VIII. Quote, "The sums of money which the fable of Christ has produced, the priests are incalculable." End quote. Boniface VIII, circa 1290. Or so it says in circa 1290. I'm not going to focus on the timelines because it's not necessarily correct. And the big kicker right here. Quote, "Just look at popes Julius III, Leo X, who themselves mocked their dignity, and the other, Boniface VIII, who said, joking with his friends, 'Ah, how rich we are from the fable of Christ.'" End quote. John Messier, 1729, Testament, page 39. In 1514, Pope Leo X, at a lavish Good Friday banquet in the Vatican, in the company of 7 intimates, Leo X famously stated the following as he raised his toast glass to the air. Quote, "How well we know what a profitable superstition this fable of Christ has been for us and our predecessors." End quote. The Pope's pronouncement, since characterized as, quote, "most infamous and damaging statement about Christianity in the history of the Church," end quote, was recorded in the diaries and records of both Pietro Cardinal Bembo, Letters and Comments on Pope Leo X, 1842 reprint, and Paolo Cardinal Giovo de Vita Leonis Decimi, it says, and 2 associates who were witnesses to it. Does this mean that the timeline that is modernly presented with BCE, before Common Era, BC, before Christianity, and AD, Anno Domini, does this mean that these timelines are incorrect and inaccurate to the point where they are thousands of years off? And does this also imply that Christianity did not officially start or have written provable records before 1514? Let me know what y'all think. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with other people that you know. If you'd like to support this channel directly, you can do so through Cashapp to BL2B Fruitful. If you'd like to get these resources and other materials available, any donations over $50 will receive access to 2Be Fruitful Training Group's private library, where we have many different documents, authenticated PDFs, treaties, law reviews, etc. Again, thank y'all for watching, taking the time to review this information, do your own due diligence, and again, all praises and glory to the Most High. This is B with 2Be Fruitful Training Group, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank y'all.